The young knobby stag on the right has a serious mullet happening that he'll eventually grow into to form his adult mane. There is a lot of habitat where sambar deer thrive that is very thick and is very hard to hunt at ground level, especially since the fires. This is where the use of a tree stand can turn a hopeless situation into a very successful one. The mature stag is on the left and is hard to see behind the blackberries and the wattle tree. In the area where this footage was taken, some of the blackberry bushes are 3 to 4 metres high. Added to this, there are thickets of wattles and dogwood that would make the chance of getting a clear shot at a deer impossible. Sambar deer have evolved with the tiger being their main predator, and as a result they expect danger to come at them from ground level, not from up in the trees. By sitting still and not moving around, they don't seem to associate you with danger, even if they do happen to look upwards. Sambar deer, like all other creatures on this earth, including us humans, have the same basic needs for survival: food, water, shelter, and of course the need to reproduce. So if I find an area that has sign of heavy browsing and heaps of droppings, I immediately start looking for a suitable tree to set my climbing tree stand up in. Often good feeding areas can be very difficult to approach due to the height and thickness of the ground cover. This is where an elevated tree stand can give you a distinct advantage. I videoed these deer late in the evening in the middle of winter, when their need for food for energy was at its highest. This is when the blackberry vines provide them with a high protein food source, as blackberry leaves make up a large part of their winter diet. Blackberry thickets enable sambar deer to consume a large volume of gettable food without having to move very far. For that reason, they are a great location to set up a tree stand to view over the area. I receive great pleasure from sitting back and watching undisturbed deer go about their daily business. By being up close and personal, a lot can be learned from watching and filming them as they interact with each other and the environment they choose to live in. I am surprised how few hunters use tree stands here in Australia. They are very popular in North America and Canada, especially with the bow hunters. Whilst our bush is quite different to theirs, there are plenty of locations here that a tree stand would allow you to hunt in that would be hopeless at ground level. Being short in stature has often placed me at a disadvantage while stalking sambar, and I am always looking for a rock or log or stump to stand up on to gain a better view. Being elevated provides the ability to look over the ground cover and see animals at a greater distance. Back in my younger days, I would often climb a suitable tree just to get a better view of the surrounding area. This led me to exploring the idea of using tree stands. To start with, I welded some coach bolts onto some angle iron to make up screw-in foot pegs and carried a shifter to screw them into a tree that had a suitable fork to sit in. I later purchased a dozen screw-in foot pegs from Cabela's in the States, which I still have today and occasionally use mainly whilst hunting hog deer. There are many different types of tree stands, and I have used several different styles over the years, including ladder, freestanding, climbing and purpose-built. There are pros and cons for them all, and as the name tree stand suggests, the key factor is finding a suitable tree for a stand in an area where the deer frequent. Years ago, I built a number of purpose-built tree stands on a mate's property that were big enough to seat up to 3 people comfortably. They took a lot of time and effort to build, but proved very successful to hunt and video from. Unfortunately, a couple of my purpose-built tree stands were destroyed when the bushfire came through and burnt out that area. About 25 years ago, I purchased a climbing tree stand that is light and compact enough to carry in the bush and set up on a suitable sound straight tree that ranges from 230 to 560 millimetres in diameter. The main advantage that the climbing tree stand has over a fixed stand is that if the wind is blowing your scent out over the area you want to view from in your fixed stand, then there is no point using it. Whereas with a climbing tree stand, you can relocate to another tree to keep your scent from blowing towards the area you wish to scan. The two main types of locations where I set up my tree stands are overlooking feeding areas or wallows. Rub trees, scrapes and preaching trees tend to be a little bit too hit and miss, as they are not frequented as much as the feeding areas or wallows. Wallows can be very productive as they are social areas where deer of all ages tend to congregate to check out who has been visiting, stags especially at first and last light. There were 7 sambar that I could see from my stand. Some were within 5 metres, and there were several others that I could hear in the thick stuff but couldn't see. Whilst I was concentrating on filming the stag, 2 hinds and a yearling fed through under my tree stand and out onto the more open country behind me. The yearling eventually hit my scent line and let out a chirp and crashed off, putting the stag onto full alert. His ears went from being laid back whilst he was feeding to darting backwards and forwards, scanning around for the sounds of danger. His eyes and nose were working overtime too, trying to confirm where the danger was coming from. At one stage he appeared to look straight up at me, but didn't react or associate me with the danger that the other deer had alerted him to. The watermark on this stag's left-hand side indicated that he has used a nearby wallow not that long ago, before coming out to feed. Wallowing is a common occurrence by stags before coming out to feed in the evening or before going back to bed during the day. A flick of his tail indicated that he was now starting to feel comfortable again as he was sheltered within the blackberry thicket, so he went back to feeding again. Like all forms of hunting, tree stands don't guarantee that you're going to see any deer, and there will be times you think you are wasting your time and should get down and start stalking. Whilst there have been plenty of times that I haven't seen a deer from my tree stand, there are probably twice as many where I have seen multiple animals. He wasn't sure why the other deer had run off, but could hear them moving around in the thick cover, so he decided to heed their warning and head back into the thick dogwood as well. The most important thing that needs to be always paramount in your mind whilst using a tree stand is safety. A fall from a height as little as 1 metre can result in a serious injury or even death. That is why the wearing of a safety harness attached to the tree should be practiced at all times. One of the hinds that had caught my scent and spooked behind me came around in front, and while she stared in my direction and tested the air for my scent, she didn't associate the object up the tree with danger. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this footage as much as I did capturing it. Till next time, safe hunting.